Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening for the next hour or so. My name is Grant Martin. I am a career counselor in the Careers and Education Department, and David Feeney, my colleague, is going to be joining us this evening. David, could you introduce yourself, please?
So I'm a career educator in the same department along with Grant, and I'm here to just provide some technical support and to encourage everybody to put on their videos so that we can see your smiley faces.
Okay, we're going to start with a poll right off the bat, just to get a feel for your take on networking, how you feel about it. So David's going to put a poll up, and once you have responded, most of you have responded, we're going to show the results. Okay, so there's the results. I'm actually a little surprised at this. So a lot of you are frightened about talking to people, but a lot of you also enjoy that, find it fun. Some of you just see it as a necessary evil. The reason I was a little bit surprised at the results is that one of the things we hear a lot in our work, I don't know if David does or not, but I still hear it quite a bit, is that networking is just about using people to get a job in a kind of a sneaky way. But we don't think that's either true or helpful. So we're going to try to sort of shift this attitude, even though a lot of you don't have it, and try to think differently about it. In one of our favorite ways to think about networking is to simply think about it as asking for directions. I assume many of you have asked for directions, or maybe been asked for directions at some point in your life. And when you gave them, I suspect that you probably didn't feel used by that other person. And my guess is that you probably felt helpful or useful. So asking for directions with your career is just like this. And it's a way, people, they basically understand that, the work environment or the work demand that you're trying to get involved in isn't really clear, and that, you might need some directions, or somebody trying to get into it might need some directions, and they're usually very willing to provide that. Another metaphor that we really like for networking is to think of it as a way of putting yourself into the conversation. So a work domain can be thought of as a conversation between everyone who's interconnected within a defined enclosed circle. And if you're outside of that circle, you're not a part of the conversation, including conversations about who gets hired. So you want to find a way to get yourself into the circle. And we're now going to talk about, how you go about asking for directions and how you go about getting yourself into these career conversations. But if you could just pop into the chat your guesses on how many jobs, what percentage of jobs you believe get posted in places like Indeed or that are just advertised. So yeah, what percentage do get posted?
20%, 30, 20, 40, 80%. 15%, that's 80%, 20, 30, there's 60 again, 30, 20, 50, 25.
Okay.
So looking like people are in around the range of 30, 35%.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, a lot of you got it right, got the answer right, but a lot of you thought it was a lot higher than it actually is. And the reality is that only 20% of jobs are actually listed publicly. So 80% are not listed at all. This number varies a little bit based on the year and the specific industry, but the point is that most jobs are never listed. So when people say something like, I've applied to every job that's available, they've really only applied to 1 in 5 jobs, because the rest are invisible or they're below the surface for a variety of reasons. In here, you might be thinking, well, I want access to all of the jobs, and of course you do. And this is why you need to network, because this is how you access the hidden job market. So now let's, take a deeper dive into this phenomenon. Okay, so the situation you're facing looks something like this. Okay, so there's this domain or area of work that you're interested in breaking into. And some of the opportunities in this domain you can see because they're on the surface. Let me just click here so you can see that representation. Okay, so these are the posted jobs. but most jobs aren't actually posted. Okay, so these are the ones that can only be accessed from within the domain. So the question becomes, how do you get access to these? Okay, so what's really happening here is that the domain is organized around people, not jobs or opportunities. And these people know one another and they communicate frequently with one another. It's through these interactions that things happen and opportunities can be found. But sometimes opportunities cannot be fulfilled from within inside the people already know about. And so they get posted and made visible to people on the outside. Okay. Keep in mind here, however, that not all visible jobs are actually real. Sometimes a posting is made because the organization is required by law to post these, but they already have an internal candidate in mind and ready to go, and they're just posting as a formality. In any case, the problem you face is that you're still on the outside, so you can only see what everyone else sees. In this circumstance, makes those opportunities really, really competitive, as I'm sure many of you have experienced already. Here's sort of a little graphic representation of what things look like here. Okay, so basically everybody's applying for the same job. That's kind of what you typically are going to experience when you put in a resume for a job. So here you are, like this bright, capable Western grad trying to get into the domain, but you're only seeing these visible job opportunities just like everyone else. And obviously it would be better if you could gain access to the invisible stuff, and you can, but the key is getting into those spaces and into those conversations where opportunities are arising. So what do? Okay, what you want to do is connect with the people, not the jobs, because it's these people who give you access to their networks of relationships. And that's how you find yourself connected to the opportunities. So when you talk to one person, they connect you with not only what they know, but also with the people that are connected to opportunities and people they know about. So it looks something like this. So through this, you will find some opportunities that look really interesting to you that you wouldn't have had any idea about any other way. And sometimes something really cool happens where your conversations spark the creation of an entirely new position that's created with you in mind. And this actually does happen. So here's a few more clicks to show you what this looks like. So it's through the course of these conversations that you also pick up the language of the domain. You start sounding like a domain insider. And as a result, you have a lot more credibility in later conversations. You start to sound like you belong. And that's really important. Okay, so this is the process that we have to engage in because I said 80% of jobs are unlisted and you won't have access to them unless and until you get yourself into the conversation. And we know that the only way to do this, or sorry, we know of only one way to do this, and this is networking in order to set up and conduct what are usually called information or informational interviews with the people on the inside of the circle to discover or create these opportunities. Okay, another show of hands here. So who's heard of the term information interviews? You can just raise your hand, and David, you could tell me what you're seeing.
I have 3. Put in your chat, guys, since so many of you don't have your video.
So you're seeing about 3 out of 55?
Yeah.
Okay, so not a lot then. Okay, I really love information interviews, and I'm going to tell you my own information interview story in a minute. But first, I want to take a quick look at the process. And also, please visit our career education webpage for more detailed information about this. Okay, so in these interviews, you are gathering data about what an industry or work domain is like, while also getting a story and seeing if another person's path resonates with you. So what's great about these interviews is that they are a cheap, fast, and easy way for you to collect a lot of information without a lot of investment, say compared to doing a co-op or an internship or actually getting a job in the field. So the basic form is to introduce yourself and then ask for an interview. Okay, so basically, hi, my name is Megan. Travis Barker gave me your name and number and said you were the person I really needed to talk to. I'm a Western student interested in your field. I'd like the chance to hear about your work experience and your organization's activity. Okay, so that's the intro, introduction of yourself. And then there's the ask. May I buy you a cup of coffee to meet, perhaps 30 minutes, sometime that's convenient for you to discuss your work and career? I would love to have a chance to hear your story and learn from your experience. Okay. Keep in mind that in the current climate, these may be Zoom meetings rather than in-person meetings, and I'm going to talk about sort of the benefits of that later on. In terms of the coffee, a nice gesture might be to just buy a Starbucks card and send it to the person electronically. That's a very nice gesture. To do this if you do this effectively, you'll probably get about 7 out of 10 people saying yes. Okay, which means that you're going to get the occasional rejection, about 30%. And mostly this is just about people being super busy or being out of the country for several months, or maybe not as much now, but usually that is the reason. So don't take it as a personal rejection. It's not a reflection at all of you as a person. It's just a failed attempt, so move on. Okay, so let's talk about the information interview, what it is. First, we're going to talk about what it is not. Above all, it is not a job interview. So the single most important thing is to act as though you're not looking for a job. Okay. An information interview is simply a conversation where you're chatting with someone about their life. Okay. You want to be perceived as a person that's interested in their trajectory, in their story, and how they got to where they are today. Because this is actually how you elicit the direction that you need. So above all, don't try to twist this into a job interview. In terms of doing it well, here's a few tips on that. So basically be genuinely curious about it, do a bit of homework, get to know as much as you can about the person that you're going to be interviewing. In person is probably best, but Zoom is also good, and then by phone would be the last mode. Offer to buy them coffee or lunch if you can afford it. And when you're having these conversations, ask for further referrals, like 2 to 3 more if possible. And then afterwards, send a thank you note or a message to the person that you have interviewed or the interviewee, and then sort of cycle back to the person who referred you to them, just with an outcome, what happened, and to say thank you. Okay. I'm now going to tell you a couple stories about why I am such a big fan of the information interview. The first one comes from a book called Designing Your Life, which is a book I also really enjoy. And the second one comes from my own experience. So the first one is a story about an architect named Kurt who lived in California. And Kurt was educated at Stanford, so he had a really good degree. A master's degree from Stanford, so good quality education. And he had a job in California, but his wife became pregnant and she wanted to move back closer to her parents who lived in Atlanta. So he agreed and they moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And he did what most job seekers do looking for a job. He responded to advertised positions, and he responded to 38 of these. So he crafted a really great cover letter for each, crafted a resume that was tailored to each position, and he did this for 38 different job postings. And what he got as a result of all this work is he got 8 rejection letters. That's all, just 8 form letters saying no thanks, and 30 companies didn't respond to him at all. Okay, and again, his experience is not atypical. Then he learned about information interviews, and he put a lot of energy into this. He actually did, I think, 56 interviews, which is a lot. That takes a lot of energy to be able to do that many interviews. And as a result of all of that effort, he was offered 8 jobs, and he got a job that was just his dream job. And this is all without even asking for a job. It was just a matter of sort of putting himself in the domain, in the context, having some conversations, becoming a part of the conversation so that people thought about him when a job came up. Okay. And then the next story, this is my own story, at least part of it. I used to be a professor, a philosophy professor, but I, for some different reasons, decided that I wanted to become a therapist. And because my training is in philosophy, I have a PhD in philosophy, I decided that I would become a philosophical therapist, which is a thing. So I became certified in this, and then it became sort of time to set up my practice, but I had no idea how to set up a practice. So what I did is I knew about information interviews. So I located a philosophical therapist in Toronto. I sent her an email and said, hey, could we get together for a conversation? And I didn't ask for the half hour. We actually had an hour conversation, which was great. And two really positive things came out of that experience. The first one was that I had a really positive narrative resonance with her and sort of with the position. And I really felt like I could do this and that I wanted to do it after having this conversation. And then the second one is I got two really great referrals that gave me some information that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So the first referral was to a practicing philosophical therapist in Vancouver, who was also a philosophy professor at, I think at Simon Fraser. Anyway, I had a conversation with him. This just took the form of back and forth emails. But anyway, what he suggested to me is that I would really struggle if I tried to make a career as a philosophical therapist. So he suggested that I just become trained as a traditional psychotherapist by doing a master's in counseling psychology. Okay. And I thought about this and I thought that, that's probably really good advice. But I was also, starting to waver a little bit because I didn't, when I looked at my background, as I said, was in philosophy, not psychology. So if I was going to get into a master's program in counseling psychology, it looked like I was probably going to have to do like some qualifying undergraduate courses, maybe even a full year. And I really wasn't looking forward to that. But then I went and I talked to the second person who was a therapist in the Waterloo area. And he had a PhD in philosophy. That's how he knew my interviewee. But he also had a degree in social work. And I asked him I was a little bit puzzled about the social work thing. And I said, why social work? And apparently I didn't know this, but in Canada, social workers are able to practice psychotherapy. And in fact, it's actually a really good qualification particularly if you want to go into private practice, because a lot of insurance companies recognize a social work degree even over a master's in counseling psychology degree. So it's really useful in that respect. And so I, decided that that's what I would do. So I enrolled in a MSW program, and during that, I had an internship at Western in the career counseling department, and I learned that I really love career counseling, and so here I am today. Okay, so my advice is to do yourself a favor and get out there and have these conversations with people, because you're going to find just a lot of great information. You're going to get good direction that you need in order to make good decisions, because I would have made terrible decisions had I not actually put myself out there and had these conversations.
So Graham, we've got a couple of questions, and
Yes.
so I will attempt to answer them as well.
Okay.
One of the questions was, assuming that you message someone on LinkedIn and you're connected, is it okay to ask that person to connect you with people who can inform you of interviews or internal job opportunities? One of the great things about networking is that you can get other referrals from the person that you meet with. Usually the first couple of people that you meet with is kind of scary because you might not know them and it feels awkward. But once you've met with them, you want to always ask for a referral to other people as well. Asking for specific internal job opportunities, you want to be a little careful of that until maybe you've built some rapport with the person, you've got to know them a bit, and now maybe you can float that idea. But I would be careful about doing that in the initial conversation.
Yeah, can I jump in here, David? I wouldn't go there in terms of asking for finding out what job opportunities are there. But one question that is kind of related to this that is okay, and that is to ask, what would somebody like me, if I was interested in working here, how would I go about that? That's kind of a non-threatening question that will elicit a response. But sort of the direct one really shuts down people in a big way, because then they start evaluating you, start thinking about whether you're suitable for the job, and then you're not going to get their story, and their story is what you want, because their story is going to give you the info you need.
Absolutely. And the second question was, can you not tell them that you're looking for work? You're not looking for work with their company, but you may be looking for work, and that's what you that's why you're doing this sort of thing.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
would just be careful of doing that, because you start to scare people off. If they think you're job hunting with them,
yeah.
they're not going to share information and may not even meet with you. So just be very careful about doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's something you actually don't even need to do because people know, I mean, if you're a student doing a bunch of information interviews, they know that you're looking for work. It's just a given. It's implicitly known. So you don't need to make it explicit. It's just obvious. Okay. Are we good? Okay. So to get these conversations, these information interviews, you need to network. And basically, there are two different ways to network. These are called outbound networking and inbound networking. And the aim of these is simply to get to the people that you want to talk to. And generally, when people think about networking, they think about outbound networking. So let's start there. Okay, so the process starts with you. David, let me know if I'm asynchronous with these clicks here. And then it extends to the people that you know, and then it extends again to the people that they know. So basically, it just starts with you talking to people in your network, saying like, hey, I'm really interested in art curation. Do you know anybody that knows anything about that? And often what you're going to get is like, hey, I have no idea. But if you try long and hard enough, you'll probably come across somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody in the field. And I actually have a really great example of this. I had a student recently who is interested in becoming a sex therapist. And I have a friend who has a friend who works at a place in Waterloo called Bliss Counseling that specializes in relationships and sex therapy. So I contacted my friend, and my friend connected me with his friend, and then he connected me with the sex therapist who started this agency, and she agreed to do an information interview with my student. Okay, so it works. Let me just do a little more clicking to sort of show you what this looks like visually. Okay, so eventually through all these webs, you eventually get to your target. It's basically easy to access because you're just talking to people that you know, so very low threat. Can be kind of slow. It might not be if you get lucky. It can be for personal and professional referrals. It's highly random. That's why it sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't, and it produces contact fatigue. So now let's talk about inbound networking. This is less random because it starts with your target, and so it can be a lot faster. So again, you start with your target. You sort of figure out who you want to connect with. So from there, you then start asking questions such as like, who might this person know? You might say, are there any Western alumni connected to this person? And the alumni search tool in Western's LinkedIn account is a really great way to find out this sort of information. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on. Or you could talk to somebody who has easy access to this person. For example, an admin assistant. So one of the functions of admin assistants is to get rid of people so that their bosses can do their work. But the flip side is also to let them in. So start your conversation there. So basically say something like, hey, I'm really interested in meeting with Kelly for a conversation about becoming a music producer. Would I be able to meet with you maybe sometime at your convenience for 10 minutes to tell you a little bit about myself? And then that can help you decide whether Kelly might be interested in meeting with me and having a conversation with me. You might not get a yes, but you'll probably get a fair hearing. Okay, so let me do a little bit more clicking so you can see what this process looks like. And then summary of some characteristics of inbound networking. It takes some creativity to figure out how to get to this person. It involves more cold calls, so that can be threatening because you don't know anybody. But it's fast when it works. It's typically used just for professional referrals. So it's not something that you would ask, like if you're trying to figure out where to buy some great playground equipment or something like that, that you wouldn't use it for that. It's more for professional stuff. And often it really impresses the target that you found a way to get to them, shows that you're a resourceful person. Now, let's just take a quick look at the basic form of asking for a referral. So it's very much like the form of the information interview. So there is an intro and then there's an ask. So basically, I'm interested in this thing. I understand that you might know some people out there who might be or might know more about this. For example, I'm interested in research in neuroscience. Do you know anyone in a research position in neuroscience that you could recommend I talk to? Sometimes they won't know anyone, but that's okay. In here, a very useful question or useful follow-up question is to say, if you were in my position, what would you do next? And often you'll get some really good advice there as well. And just remember that in all cases, you're just simply asking for help. You're asking for directions. Okay, so very non-threatening. Students, however, often just get stuck at the start of the process because they don't know where to begin. There's some different reasons for this. One of the big ones is that they see their career is really tightly bound to their degree. And in some situations in regulated professions, it is tightly bound. But for the most part, the work world does not revolve around university degrees. And so most people end up in careers that are only tangentially related to what they studied at university. And when students get stuck on this idea, in career counseling, we like to encourage them to think very broadly about some challenges that they would like to face, or to just think very about broad areas that they are interested in. So don't ask students what they want to be when they grow up. Ask them what problem they want to solve and what they need to learn to build the knowledge, skills, and abilities to solve that problem. I want you to now take a minute to think about some challenges or social problems that you might be interested in addressing. So it could be like something like redistributing wealth. It could be like redesigning the healthcare system, growing food in an ecologically sound way, fighting racism, promoting racial justice, improving mental health, solving technical problems for people. Or just think about some areas that you'd really like to go into, like oncology, criminal law, film production, copy editing, publishing, or whatever. Okay, so just take a minute or so to identify something that is really of interest to you. Okay, so we hope you have identified something. We're now going to do an exercise. It's an interactive exercise using something called a Padlet board. And you can think of a Padlet board as an electronic whiteboard where you can place sticky notes. So some takeaways from this. I just have a question. Did anybody actually feel that you're being used by offering up information to your peers? Or did you get some satisfaction from being, as a consequence of being helpful to others? You can just post your comments in the chat if you would like to. Takeaways, remember that you are surrounded by referral sources. They're all around you, so just keep asking people. People will help you if you ask and ask a lot. And keep in mind that when you are asking for help, you're just asking for directions or directional help. And remember that one day people are going to come to you for help. Okay, we're now going to look at elevator pitches. Elevator pitches are gaining a bit of a bad rap because they're increasingly seen as canned, inauthentic forms of communication in which you're really not relating to the other person. But they don't have to be seen this way. And here is a quick video that we're going to show you that shows sort of a different way of thinking about the elevator pitch as an elevator conversation. So I hope you enjoy this. I do.
A common concept associated with networking is the elevator pitch, which many people imagine as a single, brief, high-stakes opportunity to sell themselves or their idea. This creates pressure that can result in canned, inauthentic conversations. But people don't do interviews or make job offers in elevators. So instead of thinking of these brief networking interactions as opportunities to sell yourself, why not reframe them as elevator conversations? An elevator conversation is an opportunity to tell your story and make a connection. It's a chance to engage organically, generate enough interest to be remembered, and plan to move the relationship forward through a phone call, email, interview, or longer conversation later. To be able to communicate clearly, it's helpful to reflect on a few questions before entering into a conversation. First, ask yourself, who will you be speaking with? Is it a specific person? Also consider, how might you be able to contribute to different projects, teams, and organizations? Then reflect on, what unique experiences have you had? These could be personal or professional. As you learn the interests and needs of a new person, you'll be able to connect the relevant parts of their experiences with your own. An elevator conversation might go something like this. First, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm an intern at YIII. Hi, I'm MB McGee. I oversee hydroelectric projects at Hydrolarge Engineering. Next, a good elevator conversation makes a connection to them or their organization. You might continue with something like, it's nice to meet you. I've read about the conservation work that Hydrolarge Engineering Company is doing. Really? I'm glad you've heard about our work. Then, build on the connection. I was especially interested because I've been helping our customers understand their energy use, and I started thinking about how your technology might help our customers too. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that possibility. An effective elevator conversation should conclude with a call to action. You could end with something like, I'd love to have a longer conversation about it. Could I follow up with you by phone or email? And you'll be surprised how often you'll hear a response like, sure, I'd be happy to chat more. Here's my information. By reflecting on your own skills and accomplishments, listening and engaging with curiosity, and looking for shared experiences and interests, you can make a good connection in a short amount of time. Rather than pitching yourself or your ideas, an elevator conversation is an opportunity to connect with another person and move the relationship forward.
I really appreciate that approach to the elevator pitch. See it as a conversation rather than inauthentic selling of yourself. I'm going to just briefly talk about LinkedIn a little bit. One of the best parts about being a part of the Western community is that there's a lot of pride in the vast alumni network. In over 190,000 of these alumni can be found on LinkedIn. As I discussed earlier, this is like a really great way to connect with alumni. And what you would want to use is the search function in LinkedIn. And unfortunately, I am temporarily locked out of my account. I don't know why here, but you basically just go into Western University, and what you want to use is the alumni search function. And so you basically just pick something that you are interested in, like I'm interested in philosophy. So I would do a search for philosophy, and we find some people there that I might want to connect with. So really recommend that you use that feature. It's just very useful in terms of connecting with people. And then finally, I want to close just by saying a few things about networking in the world of COVID-19. And specifically, I want to challenge this idea or dysfunctional belief that you can't network now because of coronavirus. And I want to do this by suggesting that COVID-19 has actually created a new context that makes it much easier for you to start networking with people from all around the world through virtual conversations. If you'd asked me a year ago if I would recommend doing information interviews via video chat, I probably would have said no, because people aren't really that familiar with it. But things are different now, and everyone is now comfortable functioning in the virtual environment or in Zoom or in video chat. It's the new normal. So take advantage of this and start connecting with people that you probably wouldn't have connected with before because they live too far away. So, take advantage of the new circumstance. I hope that this presentation has shifted your attitude maybe a little bit towards networking. I know that many of you had positive views at the start, but if you were feeling negative about networking, I hope this maybe has shifted that a little bit. And so I wanted to actually do a second poll. So actually, the big shift I see there is that there isn't as much fear over the thought of talking to somebody that you don't know. That's interesting. Just a couple of other things before we leave. There are different ways to connect with us, to use our services in the Careers Education Department. We offer these workshops this year. Of course, they're all being offered virtually, but as I said, there's a LinkedIn one tomorrow. There are ones on resume and cover letters, job searching in a virtual environment. We also offer individualized career appointments, so you can make an appointment to meet with a career counselor, which is what I am, or a career educator, which is what David is. And we have a service called Work, which is a resume and cover writing service that is run by trained students. It's a really excellent service. It's available every weekday. And finally, we have a really robust, excellent website that there are lots of resources on. So do check that out if you're looking for some career help, because that's a good place to start. So I just want to say thank you. We have a presence on Facebook, on Twitter, and what's that other one? That's Instagram. So check us out there if you'd like to. And I just want to say thank you for spending the time with us this evening. And if you want to hang around a little bit and ask us questions, I think David and I would be happy to answer any individual questions that you have. Otherwise, again, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us tonight.
We had a question in the chat about advice or tips for people who get anxious when speaking with new people, even remotely. How can I calm myself to think clearly and actively participate in the conversation?
The first thing I would do in that regard is to remember that it's not really about you performing. So you're not being evaluated at all because you're not asking for a job. The skill you want to bring to this encounter is empathy. You want to have empathy for the other person. So you want to be a good listener. You want to basically hear about them. So that, I think that tends to take away quite a bit of anxiety, because you're not in a situation where they're judging you or evaluating you. In a job interview, that's going on for sure. And that can be super nerve-wracking. But in an information interview, it's about them. It's about being present to the other person and in making space for them to tell you about their story.